Good morning, Covenant Church. We are ready to dive into worship and the newest message of our series, The Cost of Doubt. But before we get started, we have a couple of announcements for you. First, last year was such a great success, and we are excited for this event this year. The Covenant Kids Treasure Hunt is back, and we want all of your kiddos and their friends or neighbors to join us. Saturday, April 9th, from 2 to 4, they will get together to discover what our incredible Jesus did for us thousands of years ago. They will have praise and worship, games, crafts, snacks, and of course, an egg hunt. Make sure to bring your basket and bag and join them. We promise this is one thing your kiddos don't want to miss. Next, the Joy Group's monthly lunch is coming up. That's on Tuesday, April 12th at 12:30 p.m. in the Family Life Center. So go ahead and jump on the app or the website to get yourself signed up today. Lastly, the countdown is officially on, and we have 2 weeks until Resurrection Sunday at Covenant Church. We are busy preparing and are really excited for you and your family to join us. This is a great time to invite someone. We have an awesome set list and an even more powerful message planned from Pastor Mike. This is one of the biggest Sundays of the year, so you want to make sure to invite somebody you know. Remember, all it takes is one introduction to Jesus, and that can change someone's life forever. So let's not take that lightly. So maybe think of some places you can invite someone, if that means work, family members, or even your neighbors. We will see you all on April 17th, either at our 8:30 service or our 10:45. Lastly, we have a special announcement we think you are all going to love. So, check out this quick promo.
With over 23 million records sold throughout their career, Covenant Worship returns better than ever. From the team that brought you the Grammy Award-winning song covers like Graves into Gardens, I Thank God, and King of Glory. Introducing Covenant Worship, the Western Collection.
There ain't no grave.
Enjoy hit singles like Ain't No Grave,
Gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave.
My Testimony,
If I ain't dead, you ain't done. Greater things are still to come.
and 10,000 Reasons.
Worship His holy name. I'm gonna sing like never before.
Emmy-nominated performance of Good, Good Father.
Father is who you are, is who you are, is who you are, and I'm loved by you.
Three-time platinum record hit, Yes I Will.
Joy with my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yeah, yes I will.
You can get this must-have 3-set collection for 3 tiny payments of $8.99. you'll receive 11 of the top hits from the Western Collection. Get yours today. Covenant Worship, the Western Collection.
And I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. A man's empty praise and treasures that fade and never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every
in church now since I did that. Oh, that leaning back thing is it's hard to learn how to do. It took me forever to learn how to lean back in the loving arms of my wonderful Savior. Because like Todd, I thought I had to show I could do it. I had to prove myself and to God. And then in the process of leaning back, he proved himself to me. And because honestly, y'all, he's all we have. Amen? Amen. Well, while I'm getting my stuff together, I'm going to... I said, well, I guess this is a very important day. I don't know how important, but I believe very important day for us because I really do believe that God did something truly amazing and unimaginable last night. I really do believe that. And I don't even really know how to describe it, to be quite honest with you. Besides that the Lord said that that's what he was doing in the middle of doing it. And then, but even last night as I went home and watched the game and decided to just sit in the living room for a little while and just relax. And then went to bed thinking, man, I'm sleepy. And went straight to sleep. And about within an hour, I was wide awake. And it wasn't groggy awake either. It was like wide awake, God. And I spent about an hour in prayer. And I know that sounds crazy. And it didn't seem like an hour. But I spent about an hour in prayer just talking to the Lord, and I thought I was having a conversation with the Lord about me encouraging you guys as to what, this series is called The Cost of Doubt, right? And to tell you guys and to make sure I was explaining to you what the promise is. And I thought of all kinds of scriptures, because God talks about he has a purpose plan for us, and we have a future and a hope, and outpourings happening and revival and a lot of good things are happening. And I thought he wanted me to just really, really explain. And I guess some of this will be that in just a minute. But he kind of took me off to another space and just began to speak a prophetic word, I believe, to my heart that I'm going to share with you. For you guys that are in this room that don't understand, I'm also going to share about a dream I had last summer. That I've never shared. I've shared it with a few people because I had sent it to them to ask them, what the world does this mean? What do you think this means? And so I know if I were in this church for the very first time, because I remember when stuff like this would happen when I got here, when people would talk about prophetic words or having a dream or having a vision, I would just always think, what in the world does that mean exactly? So I understand that. I grew up not knowing what any of that stuff meant, to be quite frank with you. We didn't talk about the Holy Spirit a lot in churches I grew up in. That's not a negative. I'm not trying to disrespect those churches because I had a great foundation built in my heart and life for who Jesus was, but I didn't know much about the Holy Spirit. So when I came here, I just thought these people were just a bunch of weirdos, honestly, to start with, and thought, well, they're always talking about something other than the Spirit, and then little did I know that it was real, that God was really available like that. And so I've had about 3 visions in my life, what I would consider visions. I don't have them all the time. I've had maybe a couple of dreams. Only one, the one I'm going to share with you a little bit today, is the only one that I really felt like is like something I need to really, really, really like pay attention to, because it means something's going on right this minute, I had one season, this is crazy. Might as well throw all the crazy stuff out here. I had one season when I was spending a crazy amount of time fasting and praying for God to just move in my own life and to move in our youth group and to pour out His Spirit in our youth group. I had about maybe a week's worth of time where every night that I would go to sleep, I would feel like I was in a worship service in heaven. And I would sleep for 8 hours and feel like I'd been asleep for 5 minutes, but I would wake up like with this, oh my God, can I go back to sleep? And it happened like for 6 or 7 days in a row where I would just go to sleep and I would just be in God's presence. And it's crazy. And I do have times where God speaks to me in the middle of the night. And when Anna was talking in first service, it dawned on me why God always speaks to me in the middle of the night. It's because I don't listen good in the daytime. I'm like a task. I mean, I was in a meeting this week with Gene and somebody else, and I was like, well, y'all can go do this. I got to go do this, because I'm like one of those people like, Like when I'm here, and I'm studying stuff, and I don't, don't take this wrong, but I don't want to be bothered. I want to like be on it, like boom, 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 boom. I'm like I will literally type 10 or 15 pages of stuff sometimes on a given day when I'm in God's just task, just boom, boom, boom. And I'm not saying that's not the Lord, but what I've discovered about myself this morning is that the reason God has taught me, because I have a more difficult time stopping and just listening, and because I'll be out after some good stuff now, but miss the best if I'm not careful. And so anyway, so that's why the Lord wakes me up in the middle of the night and has conversations with me, because it's the only time I'll shut up and sit still. So anyway, it happened last night. I got this word, and so it's not real long, but it's important. And here's what he said to me. This is the first part of it. And I again, Krista, I apologize. I know I probably woke you up, didn't I? I'm sorry. Are you mad? And this is a prophetic word from the Lord. If you want to be dealing with him, no, I try to be quiet, but you know how mom would ought to be hearing a pin drop, like, oh yeah, it's like I slept through like Hugo. So anyway, so here's what he said to me. 2:37 this morning. This is the 2:37 part. Said, I want you to know that I announce everything that I will do prophetically before I do it, both in his word, both by my word, and often through a prophetic voice as well. I want you to know that I have announced in my word and through prophetic voices a falling away and a last day's rebellion. See, what I find to be true is that, number one, I know God has prophesied about a last day's falling away in Scripture, and then he gives us signs in Matthew 24, and as we've been in the study of Revelation, we've kind of overturned a couple more things that we can pay attention to, that are things to pay attention to of where we are in time. We've studied the book of Daniel to know that we're probably at a space where we can know that this is a significant season that we're living in. But God was reminding me last night again, I have both prophesied through my word and through prophetic voices on the earth right now that we are in a season of falling away and rebellion. But he furthermore says, but I've also announced a last day's outpouring in my word and through the prophetic voices that I've entrusted that to on the earth, which is true. I don't listen to every prophet, by the way. People send me stuff from prophets all the time. Some of y'all send me stuff from prophets that I won't even pay attention to. I don't mean to be offensive, but I just, if I don't have a peace, just because you have a peace listening to a prophet, don't mean I'm going to have a peace listening to that prophet. I think some of y'all listen to some lunatics. Okay. I don't know who that belongs to, but he furthermore told me this. Right now, two simultaneous things are occurring. A culture that is increasingly antichrist. Now, a lot of times we think, the Antichrist is a spirit, by the way. At some point, the Antichrist spirit will attach itself to a human being, and that person will be the Antichrist. That person won't have the market cornered on just Antichrist thinking, because the word anti means opposite or not, or in opposition to. There's an opposition to spirit of Christ, Antichrist spirit on the earth now, right? And it's at work. So he said simultaneously, we have a culture that is Antichrist, an opposite of Jesus. But we have a remnant that is increasingly Christ. So we have a culture that is Antichrist and a remnant that is Christ. This is important. And it has been announced, and it will be. That's what he told me. And we should not be caught off guard. The church should be the last group of people shocked with an end-time rebellion or an end-time outpouring. We have literally no excuse if we miss God in the last days. That's what he was saying to me. And let me tell you this. Most of us are in one camp or the other. You're like, preacher calling me Antichrist? Let me tell you something. You can sit in the church and have an anti-Christ spirit at work in your life. Okay? That's hardcore right there, right? Now, one group of these two simultaneous movements is resistant to a spirit-led life, while the other is embracing it. So you want to know which group you're in. Are you embracing a spirit-led life, or are you resisting a spirit-led life? It doesn't mean I think you're demonic if you're resisting a spirit-led life. What I think it means is that you're distracted and you're going to miss God. That's what I think. You're going to miss the promise. It will cause doubt in you. It will cause distraction in you, and you will miss the move of God that is coming to the earth. As we look for the ones who we allow to speak into our lives, we must choose those led of the Spirit of the living God. Okay? Now that was pretty to the point. I went back to my bed and I laid down and I said, Lord, good night. And he said, I'm not finished. I said, for real. I'm fine because I'm good. I'm not tired. I'm not like, I just wasn't. He said, you remember your dream? And I knew exactly which dream he was talking about. It's one I hadn't thought about in months, but I knew when I had it. You ever had a dream that you knew it was important? And I've only had a couple of those, but I knew this was as important. It happened last summer. It was on my last night of vacation, and it was actually on June the 21st, 2021, at 4:35 a.m. I woke up from a dream, and the Lord is connecting that dream to what happened in here last night. And I didn't know that. And he's going to connect the sermon to it in just a minute. So, which is only God can do. Right? And so here's my dream. So I was coming back from a vacation. And y'all are like, well, you're dreaming about a vacation. You're on a vacation. Is that all you do is vacate? And I'm like, no. But I'm coming back from a vacation, and the interesting thing about coming back from that vacation was the day that I was coming back was undoubtedly on a Saturday morning, I think. There was a men's conference that was going on over here at the church. And so I drove into the parking lot and come into the tail end of Nathan was doing like part of it, and we had another speaker lined up next. And so we were on this break between Nathan and the next speaker. And I'm not going to mention all of the names of the people in this because it would incriminate me. No, I'm just kidding. I won't mention every name. I knew who the next speaker was, but you don't need to know that. The point is, the next speaker was going to speak, and it was the speaker I had almost invited out of obligation. It wasn't like one that I knew immediately that I had not prayed about this enough, that I had literally just invited this preacher to preach out of an obligation from my heart, okay? So we're in between, and we go outside. We actually go out here. There's a couple people that I remember seeing. I remember seeing a lot of you ladies just moving around on the campus serving like crazy, like making sure we had snacks, food, and drinks, whatever. But I went outside, and I ran right straight into Jeff and Brandon and Ronnie. Were kind of standing over here on the side. And Jeff's the only one that really spoke to me, but he walked over to me and he said, God is moving in this church. And I said, yes, he is, brother. God bless you, big country, or whatever I would say to you in a dream, you know. And I walked on down out, and I was just greeting people. I saw people listen in this dream that I had went to high school with, that I hadn't seen in 30 years. They were just standing there like, hey, we came. And I was like, wow, this is cool, you know. So all of that means something that you don't need to know about yet today. And so we're out here in a parking lot, and we're just like having just drinks. And we look down past that way, and there's a couple bears, but actually there's just one big brown one that really gets my attention because he decides he's going to run toward us. Well, about this time, it dawns on me that I don't have my car keys with me. And the reason that it dawns on me that I don't have my car keys with me was because when that bear started coming, all of these like redneck, tough country men in our church all went and jumped in their cars. And I'm standing there like, what am I going to do? And I turned around and there's this brown F-150, which is very significant to me. Because the two men in my life, I've had what I would consider a lot of great men pour into my life. But there's three of them that changed the course of my life. My dad, my grandfather Divine, and Neil Radebaugh. When I turn around and I see this brown F-150, I immediately know that car either belongs to my grandfather or to Neil. And so I would have to apologize for this later. I didn't have a key to that one either. I jumped on top of the car, okay? I literally stood on top of this car and I watched this scene play out. And the bear was like moving all over the parking lot out here and he couldn't find anybody to get. But there was this stray dog down here that had ran across the property about the same time the bear came down after us. And that bear just like took off. And it was like, poof, he pounced him right down here at the bottom of the parking lot. Just pounced. About halfway in front of the gym. I can see it right now in my mind. He jumped on that dog and I thought, uh-oh. That's really what I thought, uh-oh. He's in trouble, you know. The strangest thing happened next was that I saw Rick. Here's another name I have to. Rick and Elijah and Jackson jumped out of their vehicles and jumped out of Rick's. They were all three packed into Rick's truck, and they take off over and they jump on the bear. And I'm sitting there going, "What are they doing? They're jumping on a bear." And so they must be getting the best of it because the bear jumps up and takes off running across the street. Goes out there kind of toward where Chuck Anthony's big field is. And they take off after it. And I'm like, I'm going to go see what happened. You know, so I take off running down. And when I get down there to around where I can see around the gym, Rick's standing there and he said, "It's dead." And I went, "Good," you know. And he said, "We brought you some bear steak." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm good." I don't really remember saying that in the dream, but I'm saying that now. Okay. He said, "I brought you some bear." And just as he handed me that meat, man, I woke up like, and I knew to get up out of the bed and write this down. And so I did. Once again, I went into the bathroom at this hotel, and I just wrote in my journal, I mean, like 3 or 4 pages. It's a whole lot more than what I shared with you. And sent that thing to a lot of people, and they began to kind of decipher it for me. And I felt like I knew some of it, but I wasn't sure. I mean, the significance of the season, of the time that it happened was incredibly important, but I can't really go into a lot of details about that. But I think it's kind of casting itself onto now. The fact that a bear was brown instead of black was important because it became like a picture of. There are people that are really, really smart that write books about spiritual stuff like this. Y'all know that? I did not. Okay. A brown bear is really significant because it's almost like it's an ideology. It represents a tear of sorts, like not a terror, but a tear of sorts. And then Rick being involved, and you guys that were serving out there cooking, Jeff, and the ladies that were in the church, and I remember seeing some of the people that work in Children's Ministry, Grace, and some of them just vibrant, like busy, like excited as they could be to be doing what they were doing. But the significance of I believe that Rick and the next generation, which was his son, and then a younger kid, all took off out to kill what I later have discovered was probably a religious spirit that was trying to be involved with our church, maybe even stopping some direction of it. And the Lord, as I was thinking about that dream last night, and by now we're at 3:52 in the morning, he said, "The bear's dead, Mike." I said, "Wow, cool." He said, "That bear is dead." He said, what happened last night which is interesting. See, in the dream, I'm at a men's conference, and last night was a men's worship service. So, you know, the fact that he woke me up to have this conversation after a night of worship with just men becomes a connected point to the men's conference where the bear got killed. Last night, the busting through of a wall happened. And I don't even understand all of it yet, but I will. If y'all knew how long I had prayed. Again, I love the ladies of this church. Some of y'all are my heroes in the faith. If you knew how long I've prayed. When John Mervine died, Miss Gilda can tell you, I stood on this stage and I could not even speak for 5 minutes. I tried. But see, John in a lot of ways represented somebody that always had my back. That guy would fight for me, even if he didn't agree with anything I was saying. Because we argued like cats and dogs, but he never, ever, ever went behind me. And he said, he always had me. And so I felt vulnerable. And God has since raised up a lot of guys. A couple of the elders, you know, like Doug used to play a big role in my life. And Jeff Turner always believed in me. And all those guys are in heaven. But I've watched some of our elders stand up and just really just have me. But I also got some of the guys that they know who they are, that I count on for just unconditional love. I don't have to worry about if they believe in me, they believe in the direction we're going, they just do it. You know, they just like, they're in. And I don't think you should ever blindly follow a pastor. Don't hear me wrong on that, okay? I think you should always seek the face of God and say, is this pastor going the right place or not? But when those guys, they got my back, and I know they do. And so last night, that significant moment happened because of this outpouring that's happening right now. This is really, really important for us as a church. This wasn't a dream about every church on the earth. It was a dream about our church. And it may be a dream about you since you're sitting in here. That maybe you got some bears in your life that need to die. And I need you to know that God can kill them. He killed my bear, or our bear. He can kill yours. So, now you know where I'm standing on this stuff. The reason it's important that you not let doubt get in your life is because doubt is going to kill the promise. Religion can kill the promise. Religion can cause the doubt that will kill the promise. And it's why I'm so passionate about this. It's why I'm so intense right now. Like, I've never been in a place like this in my life where I had such a connection to the voice of God. And I don't say that in a bragging way. I say that in a like, he's so available way. And a lot of you guys, I'm not the only one experiencing this. I promise you I'm not. Those men last night know what I'm talking about because there are people here last night that were here the day this church opened. And there were people there last night that came last week. And God's not a respecter of persons. He's going to pour the freedom out on whoever's there chasing it. And so anyway, now let's look at our sermon today, and let's see how that connects in with what all that happened last night, which was crazy. Chad, thank you for planning last night. Todd, those 11 guys on stage. Wow. Didn't think y'all could do it without the girls. So last week, we finished, our sermon last week was about the heart of Caleb, how God was just so pleased with the heart of Caleb. And he made all these promises to Caleb. And now he goes right back to Aaron and Moses to have a conversation with them after saying, I was blessed by Caleb. I was blessed by his heart. But then he comes back to him and he says this, and the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron saying, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation who complain against me? Now remember that God was not just angry that they complained against him, that he was very angry that they complained against the guy that he had raised up to lead them. Now that's not a sentence about me. I'm just telling you that God is, what I really believe it's a sentence about is if you complain about the thing that God is trying to bring, that's dangerous. All right? He said, I have heard their complaints which the children of Israel make against me. So say this to them, as I live, and we know he will live and never die. As I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will do to you. And the carcasses of you who have complained against me shall fall in this wilderness. This is a hardcore word. And all of you who were numbered according to your entire number from 20 years old and above. What's he saying? He said, everybody over 20 can't go in because you bought into the lie. Now, this is not a statement about your age, by the way. Those men last night were from 70 to 12, okay? It's not about your age, and it's not even all about last night either, don't get me wrong. But it's not about your age, it's about your availability. These people over 20 were unavailable to him, okay? He said, except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun, you shall by no means enter the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. I've never thought that before until now. He said, I'm not going to give you the land I swore I would make you live in. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, remember when they were crying, they'll just kill our kids. They're going to rape our wives and kill our kids. But these little ones that you said would be victims, I will bring them in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherds in the wilderness 40 years, and bear the brunt of your infidelity until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness. According to the number of the days in which you've spied out the land, 40 days. For each day you shall bear your guilt 1 year, namely for 40 years, and you shall know my rejection. Now let me stop right there and say this. I don't believe he's necessarily casting all those people to death. We'll get to a group he's going to do that to in a minute. But what I think he's saying is that in this 40-year window, because what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a 40-year window, 1 year for every day that you were over there spying out land I told you could have. I will absolutely destroy, that I told you I would destroy through you, the enemies through you, and I would give you every single one of for every day you were over there looking, I'm going to give you a year in wilderness, 40 years. So I believe what he's saying when he says your carcasses will die in the wilderness is there in that period of that 40 years, there will be many of them that would die on this side of the promise. I don't think this is a salvation question either, by the way. I don't think he's saying I'm casting you into hell. I think he's saying if you don't want to go walk in the purpose I've given to you, I will get somebody who will. I will always, he says in his word, I will always have a remnant. Okay? So, verse 35, I the Lord have spoken this, and I will surely do so to all the evil congregation who are gathered together against me. And in the wilderness they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. I believe that's some of that group that are cursed to the 40-year window. Continue. Verse 36 says something completely different. Now the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land, who returned. Now listen to me. He's talking about a group of people who went over and saw the land and returned and made the congregation complain. Whew, this is hard. Against him by bringing a bad report of the land to them, basically. He said, now you people that are complaining can stay out here for 40 years. But you people that went over there and brought this complaint and got your group together and you decided that you would cause them to be mad, this might be a good time for me to stop and read Proverbs 6. But God hates haughty eyes, lying tongues, hands that shed innocent blood, hearts that devise wicked schemes, feet that rush to evil, false witness, and people who stir up strife or conflict. And he's not talking about just the church either, by the way. It could be talking about here, but he's talking about in anywhere you are. If you're a strife causer at your place of employment, he's talking to you. If you bring strife in your family, that you always bring in dissension, you always got to have a complaint, and you always got to have people listen to your complaint, and you start gathering your people together and you convince them to be complainers. Here's who he's talking to. He said, you guys that went over and saw the land and came back and got the congregation to complain by bringing a bad report, those very men who brought the evil report about the land died by the plague before the Lord. It was that quick at that moment. But Joshua and Caleb, they remained alive, and are the men who went to spy out the land. So here's the 4 points that the Lord wants me to drive home, and we're almost done, I promise. Complainers will always remain in the wilderness. Complainers always get to stay in the wilderness. Now, if you're a complainer and you decide that it's going to be your mission to get other people to complain with you, I don't even want to talk about what God might do with that. But my point is, complainers stay in wilderness journeys. Okay? Complainers stay in the wilderness. It's not a salvation question again. It just means you'll always live on this side of the promise. And you weren't born to live on this side of the promise. You weren't released from captivity to live on this side of the promise. God had a land that he wanted to make you dwell in that you have refused. Number 2, it usually isn't who you expect. God's not a respecter of persons. Again, this is in this story. Anybody 20 years and younger can come in. Everybody older than that can't. My point is this. It's an amazing thought that God lets me even stand here. I've learned that I'm a lot like Paul, that I'm chief among sinners. It's interesting, when Paul first started out in ministry, he said, hey, if you don't know where you're going, follow me. I know where I'm going. And by the time the end of his life, he said, I'm the chief of sinners. You know what kind of revelation has happened in that guy's life? That he recognizes at this point that he is a mess, and the only thing that saved him was God's mercy. That's where I stand. I live in that space of gratefulness because of God's mercy. And I promise you, here's the deal. He's going to use whoever lets him use them. He will let you be part of the remnant if you will let him let you be part of the remnant. And it's because it's not going to be who you expect. It's not always who you expect. It's not the people that always throw themselves out there as spiritual giants in the church that are really doing the hardcore work of the church. Sometimes it's the guy volunteering at the homeless shelter, or going to see somebody at the jail this morning, or picking up some dude on the side of the road, or giving somebody $3 at Walmart, or paying for somebody's drink at the convenience store. I'm telling you, there's little things that you can do that God is watching and paying attention to. It's not about you being a deacon or an elder in our church. It's not that. It's not about being the preacher of the church. It's not that. It's not about being on a worship team. It's not about being a worship leader. It's not about being a youth pastor. It's not about being any kind of pastor. It's about being available. It doesn't matter where you came from. I told you this. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter, all your failures. You don't have to give God your resume. He knows it. It's not who you think. The people of Israel that should have known better were the ones over 20. They have seen his faithfulness these many years in this wilderness journey. They had watched God bring them food out of the clouds. They watched him bring water out of rocks. They should have known. They should have known better than anybody. If somebody comes back to me after all I've seen God do and says, we can't go get the land, they should have said, boy, get in line. We are going with Caleb. But they didn't. It's not who you think always, is it? It's not going to be who you think always. Some of y'all think y'all are like, no way it can be me. That will make it you. Amen. He does. I mean, some of y'all like think there's no way it can be me. And you walk in such humility. I love you, Jesus, but there's no way you'll use me for stuff. And God said, you're the one I want. Because you won't try to steal my glory. You won't touch my glory. You know what I did for you. Come here. Amen. It's not who you think, y'all. It's not going to be who I think either. Number 3, Caleb and Joshua, you get to go in. Why? Because faith always leads to promise. Lack of faith always misses the promise. Doubt will cost you the promise. Faith will get you to the promise. Like, what does that mean? It means you keep believing even when you don't want to believe. Even when everything in your natural heart and mind experience tells you, don't keep believing this. I prayed for that person and they died. I'm never praying for another person again. Stop. You just dumbed down your faith to your experience. No, you pray for them to be healed. You pray for God to bring provision. You pray for God to bless. Well, he didn't bless me last time. Well, pray again. Stop doubting. Don't doubt. All of my promises are yes and amen. He's a yes and amen God. When he says it, he is it. Well, that's not my experience. Okay. You going to build your theology on your experience or on his promise? It's your choice. It's my choice. I'm not going to put myself out there again and pray for for this to happen in somebody's life. If I've been praying for a good man in my life, my whole life, and I'm just not going to put myself out there anymore. Well, then you'll get a bad one. You can't dumb down your faith to your experience. It's got to be his word. It's the only thing you can build a house on is the word. And then finally, he said, I'm going to allow your kids to go in instead. A bypass of blessing. I just think that's a beautiful picture of what God will do in this season of outpouring. This season of rebellion and this season of outpouring, they're both being raised up at the same time. It's the wheat and the snares. It's a story coming together in our very eyes in some weird way. And I know that Revelation will handle the heaven and hell part of that. But listen to me. There's a generation that is running the counter to the word of the Lord. And there's a generation who will run to the word of the Lord. And so what God is doing in this season right now is he's walking, even to church people, and he's walking up to them and he's analyzing their life. And he's like, yes. And he's saying, look, if you're not volunteer for this service, then I will bypass you and I will bring the blessing on the one behind you. Because I'm going to have a remnant. I'm going to have a remnant. So 3 things. I told y'all this a little bit Wednesday night, and I'm closing with this. I was listening to Jonathan Cahn because somebody sent me Leslie sent me a YouTube thing to watch the other day, and he was an old one, but it was still prophetic, and I believe it was very accurate. He said there are 3 great returns that are happening on the earth right now. See, because the Bible is a book of returns to promise. I mean, the Bible is a book of jubilees. The Bible is a book of God restoring. In fact, if you want to know the truth, the end of Revelation is the beginning of Genesis. See, what we forfeited in Genesis 2 with the original sin in your life, I didn't do it. You've done enough. We've done enough. What we forfeited with original sin in Genesis 2, God completely restores at the end of Revelation. So the end of Revelation looks like Genesis 1:1. What do I mean by that? The Bible says that God walked with Adam and Eve. God walked with them. He wasn't a distant God. He was tabernacling with them. The promise of Revelation at the end is God will, verse chapter 21, I will once again tabernacle with men. You will see me face to face. We can hold hands. We can go on a walk and pick flowers. We can go fishing. Right? So Jonathan Kahn says, well, if the Bible is a book of jubilees and promises of return, then we need to pay attention to what's returning right now. The one thing we know, and it's very important scripturally, spiritually, end time important, is that the Jewish people are going home. They're returning to Israel. They don't even know why. I mean in droves. In droves. The reason I'm not telling you all of this is because I got a sermon coming on this. They're coming in droves. They're returning home. The culture is returning to its roots. Well, in America, because we're arrogant, we think, well, I know what our roots are. We are a Christian nation. Listen, before we became a nation, we were from all over the world. That's the difference. And most of us had some European connection, and the culture of that day was the Roman Empire. So the culture of America, if you actually compare the culture of America to the Roman Empire, you will see a whole lot of similarities. The diluting of truth that went on in that culture. The only people that were like persecuted in that whole culture of the Roman Empire was Christians. It was sexually explicit and sinful behavior. There was worship of sex. There was a total dysfunction of what God created sex for in that particular culture. There was an absence of absolute truth in that culture. There was an existence of secular human thought like the world has never seen in that culture, meaning I will do what I want to do for me because I want to do it for me. And I get to decide for me because I'm God. That was the whole culture of the Roman Empire. If you want to look and see where our culture that is antichrist culture, that not for Jesus culture is going to end up, just go study the Roman Empire and you will find out. That's the second return. But the third return is the church returning to its roots in a powerful way. 10 years ago, the Lord spoke to my heart with a prophetic word. It might have been my first one. And he said to me in my prayer closet one day, the last church, Mike, will look like the first church. I said, what does that mean? It'll be a church full of the Holy Spirit. It'll be a church walking in the miraculous. It will be a church that is unified. It will be a church that takes care of its own. It will be a church that serves more than any other church can serve. That's what God has drawn us back to in this season. As we move toward outpouring, as we move toward promise, one of the greatest parts of that is that the church will once again be filled with the Holy Spirit and walk out a life obedient every single day to the Spirit of the living God. There will be a connection to the church, to the Holy Spirit, like we've not seen in the church since Acts. That's our return. That's our promised return, I believe. With everything in my heart, I believe that's what's happening. Now, our choice is this. Are we going to stay on the outside looking in, or are we going to go get our promise? We're going to go get our promise. And here's how you're going to get your promise. You're going to deny anti-Christ spiritual thoughts and actions. And you're going to ask God to fill you with His Spirit. Because that is the absolute only way you will know. You will know where to go. Amen. Stand with me.